Okay, good morning. So we continue our learning in Hemshech Samach Vav. So as I was saying, some warm regards from Yerushalayim, from Palm Beach, and from Montreal. In 24-hour period, I was in two hemispheres, what we call the Chatzi Kadra Elyon, the higher hemisphere of Israel, Jerusalem, the night, Monday night to Yud Kislev, and Tuesday night back to this lower hemisphere in Montreal, Canada. And quite a fascinating trip. And I saw firsthand how Chassidus is impacting so many different communities and individuals beyond what has ever been before. And quite few are familiar with this class, Samach Vav. Some are participating, some will participate. So we march on in Yafutza Meinesecha Chutza, spreading the wellsprings outward. What better way? Coming from Yutas Kislev, that is the essential message, the essential theme of the day. The Rebbe Rashab said that in his opinion, the main Iker Yafutza Meinesecha Chutza began on Yutas Kislev. And the same Rebbe Rashab is what we're learning now in Hemshech Samach Vav. So with that said, we'll get straight to where we are up to. And that is, we are on page, if I recall correctly, I believe on page 8. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just double checking. On our group, I probably posted where the last class. 1 second.
I believe we're on page Yud Aleph.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I think, yeah.
You may be right. I think you're right. No, you're right. My mistake. Yeah. We are on page Yud Aleph. Okay. Thank you for, I think once we start learning, we'd figure that out. But I just want to see myself what the last exact topic was. Please bear with me a moment. Yeah, it was November 27th, page 1011, we learned ultimate purpose of creation. Okay, good. So let's sum up what we've been learning, and then we can continue. So we've been entered into one of the most fundamental themes in Chassidus, which is the very reason, or the very cause of creation. We're familiar with the statement, the Alter Rebbe, in chapter 36 in Tanya, Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu liyisle yizbarach dira b'tachtenim. God desired to have a dira, a home, a dwelling place, a comfortable environment in tachtenim dafke. Tachtenim means the lowest of worlds, lowest, as he explains there, lowest in divine revelation, meaning the darkest of all worlds. Where in the higher worlds, there's revealed godliness, depending on which world, to the extent of that level. But in Tachtenim, like he says, is a cheshach kafel mechupel. It's a double and quadruple darkness, where, as we all experience, you don't see or sense the divine. You need to look. You need to work to access it. It's obviously there, but it's concealed. And it's through our Torah and Mitzvos, like he said it right in the beginning when he began talking about this at the bottom of page 4. The Tachlis B'Yisrael is that the neshama comes down below. Lahamshir Gilu Erein Sof Ve'elam Esayidei Torah and Mitzvos. So God gave us divine instruments, namely Torah, Mitzvos. With that, we draw divine and reveal divine energy within Tachtenim. Or in the language of Chassidus, the Hamshach of Sevav Kalam and into Memaleh Kalam. Transcendent divine energy into the divine energy that is tailored and customized to our existence, as he explained on page 4 and 5, as I just referred to. But then the Alter Rebbe went, and what's the chiddush of that? He said the chiddush is that in order to create existence, God made a tzimtzum. He concealed the divine, So what's the chiddush? We're just revealing what was concealed. The answer is no, now it's being revealed on our terms. The kalim can receive it. Before the tzimtzum, there was nothing. There was no other entity. Here there is now tachtenim. There is an existing entity, and they're receiving. And furthermore, even a bigger chiddush is that we actually get an energy through this avodah that's even deeper than the Eir before the tzimtzum. And we're now beginning to understand what that means, because remember, Nesave is higher than the Eir before the tzimtzum. The very Eir before the tzimtzum would not exist unless God wanted it, and He wanted it because He wanted tachtenim. He didn't need Eir. God doesn't need light. For what purpose? So, as we're going to discuss in more detail now. So the whole point is that it's fulfilling the Nesave. And that's a chiddush even compared to Eir Lifnei Tzimtzum, because Eir Lifnei Tzimtzum is not nimshach and tachtenim. It does not fulfill the ultimate purpose. It's a stepping stone. It's a means to an end. It's necessary because it'll help us achieve the goal of bringing Eir Ein Sof into existence. So that's the chiddush. Now then the Rebbe Rashab continues to really appreciate that. We need to let's compare it to the other reasons given for creation, for existence. And namely, he brings the Eitz Chaim and the Zohar and says it's more or less the same reason, different language. In the language of the Eitz Chaim is legalis. I'm now summing up what we learned on page 6. Just to bring us up to speed, I just want to sum it all up. It's good to have the context. So what did he say? Eitz Chaim, Sibas B'ris El Mechdei Sheyizgalu Shleimus Keichesav U'Puleisav V'Shmeisav V'Kinuyav. The reason was because God wanted to reveal the shleimus, the completeness, the fullness, the perfection, if you wish, and actualize of His keiches and Puleisav, His capacities, His powers, His potential, His actions. However, we translate it with all the different words. The language of the Zohar, v'chein isa b'Zohar, he says, begin b'chtei sheyishtamudin bei, or later used the expression yishtamudin lei, in order that he should be known. And the Rebbe Rashab makes it clear that the Zohar, that the Eitz Chaim is explaining the Zohar, revealing his potential means that it should be known. That's what revealing is. And the Rebbe Rashab makes it very clear right away that this reasons, obviously, it says it in Eitz Chaim, the Rizal and the Zohar, but he says you cannot say that is the ultimate purpose. This reason applies to Memaleh Kalam. Memaleh Kalam, which is already the divine energy that enters into existence. So yes, the divine energy initially can be more in a potential state or not revealed, and then it's Nizgala Eiris into Kalim. Where can you speak about revealing something in Eir and Kali? Yes, just like a human being, Kavyachal, so to speak, just for comparative purposes, that you have faculties and potential. When you, through training, and you go through your life and your experience, you're actualizing your faculties. Where does that apply? To Eiris and Kalim. So the Eir can be concealed, then it's revealed in the Kali. That's Memaleh Kalam. That's where you could apply both the Eitz Chaim and the Zohar's explanation. And then he goes on to explain why you can't say that's the ultimate purpose, because God's keiches are complete. He doesn't need to actualize them. They are ein koyach chaser peil, as he explains on page 7. Once God is capable of doing something, it's as if He did it. Or better said, better phrase would be, his potential does not lack the power of the actual. By us, of course it lacks, because we're human beings, we're creations. So therefore you can't say that's the ultimate purpose. The same thing with begin d'ishtamudin bei. Let me just make sure. Yeah, and there he discussed at length the different levels of the spheres, the hidden spheres. There was a long discussion on page 7 and 8 on that. Okay, second. Good. And the same thing with begin d'ishtamudin bei. On bottom of page 8 and 9, he explained, you also can't say that. That God needs to be known is not for God anything from Him being known. It's only a milah for those that are knowing Him. Like he said. A second point to be made is that the main place where you see Gilui Keiches and begin d'ishtamud and God's being aware of God is in the higher worlds. This also will not explain, besides the first point we just made, that God is complete without it. The second point is, then you don't need tachtenim. that doesn't explain why he created this lowest of worlds, where where awareness of God, the idea of God, and the keiches of God are not revealed. And if it was for those reasons alone, you could just create the higher worlds and reveal those keiches and atzilus, as he explained, and higher than atzilus. Where there's full consciousness of godliness, so the purpose of Legala Shlemus Kechesov is fulfilled there. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not fulfilled in this lowest of worlds, but to say you need this lowest world to reveal God's faculties or that He be known, that you cannot say. Once you have this lowest world, you also have those reasons, as we began discussing, and I'm going to elaborate more in the coming classes. But to explain Tachtenim, you need another reason. Because the Gili of Keiches of Hashem, revealing His capacity and getting to, and that He be known, is fulfilled actually in a higher way, in the higher worlds, in Atzilus and higher. As he explained on page 8 and 9. We explained that length. And in this world, the only way to get there is through Avodah and Yegiyah, to reveal that. It's not quite as easy as it is in the higher worlds. So right away you see that there has to be another reason, an ultimate reason. And the words he's using, tachlis, to say that's the ultimate purpose of the Zohar and Eitz Chaim, you cannot say. You could say it's a purpose. It's also one of the things that are achieved through existence, but you can't say it's the ultimate purpose as he's leading up and building all this up to, okay. Then he spoke about Alma Diskasya, Alma Disgalia. Okay, look, I'm going now to page 10 and summing up to where we're up to. So we have the dilemma here, only with the reasons of Eitz Chaim and Zohar, why create a world that's so concealed? If your kavanah is to reveal, what do you need this deep concealment? So the Rebbe Rashab continues, now summing up page 11, is because Yedua, the tachlis, is that should be Elam HaTachton. Not all this lowest of world, all of the Hishtalshus is all in order for there to be this lowest world, Seif Maisa b'machshava tchila. Like in the example, you want to build a home, all the ideas and theories of it and conceptual is beautiful, but the ultimate goal is the finished product. And the finished product is in this lowest of worlds. Seif Maisa b'machshava tchila. And that's why Eretz Kodm l'Shamayim. And the way to do that is through the Tzimtzum. Only the Tzimtzum. Just quickly scanning it 1 second. Yeah, and he goes back again. And therefore, for this world, you cannot say the reason is the reason is the Eitz Chaim and the Zohar, because he says because Shlemus Zeis was there also before the world was created, as well as the awareness and consciousness of God was also there. Eloha Inyanhu. So what is the reason? So now he goes back to the Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu, which he mentioned but he didn't elaborate on, and he brings the Medrash Shukov Amudei Sheish, that his thighs are like pillars of marble. The word shukah from the word shukah. Shukah in Hebrew is like taiva, desire. Not mitzada hechlich, it's mitzada shukah. Because if it was a reason, a logical reason, why are you saying the word shukah? Shukah means I desire something. When it came to legal shlemus kechesov, there's a reason, it's a logical reason, which of course doesn't apply to the highest levels. But here the word is shukah. So he goes on to explain like the Eitz Chaim says, that's all for another word of shleimus. For something to be complete, that has to be actualized. That's still the Eitz Chaim and the Zohar's reason. And I think when I explained this the first time, I may have phrased it a little incorrectly, so I want to just correct myself. I don't remember now, but I think I didn't say it clearly. He says, V'yesh leimer, I'm looking at the bottom of page 10, just to frame it properly. He said, V'yesh leimer, mishum dim lekein, eina muvah ma'ich b'slei lakadosh baruch hu. Because If it's not for shlemus, then why would God care that he be known? What's negei l'mayla? Man negei l'mayla is the yodu I say. That's why the Eitz Chaim says the begin the shtamudim be'av zeyar is in order for shlemus. But you can't say shlemus when you talk about l'mayla because Hashem is, like he says, Iev shlemet tam al zeh. You can't say this, firstly, because God is complete, period. And secondly, you can't say this reason on the lowest worlds, because there again, to achieve that shlemus, all you need are the higher worlds. You don't need the lowest worlds. So therefore, the reason is tshuka. There's another factor that comes into play. It's not to actualize God's capacity. It's not to reveal. It's not for him to be known. Elo mitzadat tshuka shenishteikik. I'm reading literally the last lines on page 10, because I just want to make sure the flow, we continue from there. The tshuka that God desired, the einonu yedim tam sichli, we don't know a logical reason for this. Actually, you know what? I'm not just going to sum up. I'm going to go again over these last lines. I think it's worthwhile because of this fundamental nature. So I'm going to begin reading. We already read it, but we'll do it again. Bottom of page 10. And if you have the Sefer, good. If not, you can find a text on samachvav.com. Regardless, even if you don't want to follow the text, I read it and I explain it all. So in English, so don't worry about it. It'll be understood even if you don't have text in front of you. So he says, I'm reading literally the second line from the bottom of the third line. That the only reason to explain this lowest of worlds is mitzadat shukah. Again, shukah can be translated longing, desire. It's very similar to taiva, and therefore they're in a sense synonymous. However, obviously there's a little difference, but he's not going into the difference here. When you say there's a desire, a longing for something, we don't know a reason. Here he says einonu yedim. Later he's going to say not just we don't know, it's beyond knowledge altogether. Here you could say, we don't know, but Hashem knows the reason. No, it's beyond reason. And what is the intention with this? What's the intention of this tshuka? What is he desiring? That of Atzmus Ein, the core of divine energy, dafke lamata, dafke below. And on this we say, I'm going now from page 10 to 11. The God desired to have a home in Tachtenim. So it's very consistent with the Medrash Shukah V'Amudei Sheish. The Shukah there, the focus is mostly the Shukah. In the Medrash, emphasizes Tachtenim. Just want to see a moment. Yeah. Tachtenim. So on top of page 11, which, as I said, we've learned, but we're going over it again, and I'll sum up what we discussed. This is not compelled by any logical or rational reason. 1 second. Yeah. It's only due because Nesava. Because he desired it. Here he says explicitly. Which taiva is higher than Tam V'das, like the Alter Rebbe said, if a taiva is ken kasha, like he brings below from the Samach Tzedek that we heard. He says, I heard that in the older Maimorim, quoting from the footnote below, footnote 140, that in the early Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe, he said in Lozhnia, when he was still in Lozhnia, before he came to Liadi, where he settled later, Lozhnia was his original city. Nesava, shenesava in altaiva ein shelim kusha. You don't ask a question, shtok ken kasha v'ataiva, like you say, if a taiva is ken kasha. Rak shenesava sheyiyah mitzias tachtenim. It's only thing we know is that he desired there should be the existence of a world, the lowest worlds of where the divine is completely concealed. V'yumshach b'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof lamata. And the purpose is that to draw into this dark tachtenim, to draw Atzmus Ein Sof lamata shezeh b'yechelis lahamshich lamata be'elam hatachten dafke. And that's capable only, this Atzmus and stuff, you can only draw down in this lowest of worlds. The highest world, higher worlds, you can draw down awareness of God and the actualization of his potential faculties, his attributes, like Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Teferes. But if you want Atzmus Ein Sof, which is higher than faculties and attributes, that's Dafkin Tachten. That the Nesave is that should be revealed in the Tachten Atzmus. Kamoishi is Boyer, as shall be explained. And I believe that's where we stopped. Yeah, I'm sure that's where we stopped. So, I'm not going to go over everything I spoke about before when we were doing the classes before we took this break, but I'll just sum up one or two key points. One point is that Nesave, the word, obviously, like always, Dibra Teira B'Lashon B'nei Adam. It's a metaphorical word. Because in fact, when it comes to Atzmus, you can't really describe Atzmus with any words. You say Mitzvah is built to Mitzvah Nimtza, and exists an non-existential existence. He exists in a non-existential way. So we have some expressions to help us understand how God is not defined by anything. Saying he's not defined, because that's also somewhat of a definition. Because you're suggesting when he's not defined that he does not have the capacity to be defined. As we'll also learn this later in Samach Vav. So bottom line is, just a second, 1 second please. What was that message? Oh, sorry. My computer gave me some message. I didn't want it to shut down or something. Sorry. Okay. So when we use the word Nesave, it's simply that Torah gives us some language to be able to grasp something. Because how would you define something that's beyond reason and logic? So Nesave gives us something that we can look at in our own lives and say, when you have a desire, I'm talking about a pure desire, that's not due to a reason. It's not because, for example, you go to work because you need to make a parnasa, make a living to support your family, your bills, to be able to do what things you want to do. That's logical. When you have a desire that does not have a so-called, it's not fulfilling something, that's something l'mayla mesechel. And we all have taivas. Now, unfortunately, most of our taivas, sometimes we identify with things that are not necessarily healthy or appropriate, but it's still a taiva. I'm not saying that's what we need to use as an example, but it's an example where something, if someone says, why did you do that? There were consequences. As a matter of fact, there's some taivas we have. And again, I'm not necessarily talking about devar masurim, things that are prohibited. A taiva you have that ended up having consequences that were not pleasant or not proper. You say, what should I do? I had a lust, I had a desire, I was seduced by something that drew me, and actually I didn't use my mind. I did something out of a taiva. Now you could also have a taiva in kedusha. Desire something, and someone say, why would you go on Mesiras Nefesh? Why would you give your life for something? And the answer is there's something inside the soul. Now, you could always find reasons and say, because Hashem is more important than my life, and I'm dedicating myself. But at the end of the day, we human beings do have the capacity to desire things that originate more than just logic. And this, especially when it comes to things like the people we love, the people who are ready to sacrifice for. I'm just using it as examples. So when you say Nesava, we have at least some handle, some word we can work with. Which, with the qualification that God's taiva is not like our taiva, obviously. But at least we have something that's not based on a seichel. When it comes to the reason in Zohar and Eitz Chaim, there's a logical reason. That God has potential, capacity, and he wants to be known. Yes, it's not the ultimate purpose because God doesn't need that. And you only need the higher worlds for that. That's correct. But there, at least you can say, okay, chesed was the potential for love, and God wanted to actualize that potential. So he created Atzilus, a chesed of Atzilus. Or Atzilus, the Klolos, the 10 hidden spheres before the Tzimtzum, as we learned. When it comes to this lowest of world, the question is, what's the reason? Why would he create a world that's antithetical to himself? What's the purpose of creating a world that is where godliness is not revealed? And the answer is Nesava. Now, some would think when Samach Vav was first delivered by the Rebbe Rashab, and generally you could say, you know what? Okay, it's true, it's coming from the Sava, but it's the ultimate fulfillment. Because for God to be known in Atzilus, what's the Chiddush? Atzilus doesn't have a Yetzer Hara, there's no Nefesh Habamis, there's no resistance, there's no darkness. So it's true, yes, it's actualizing divine consciousness. In Chabad or Chagas, Hashem's Chesed is being revealed. But if you really want a Chiddush, an innovation, is that God should be known in this world, in a world that doesn't know Him. And so that seems to be even a bigger Chiddush. So why are you saying it's purely Taiva? You can make a compelling case, a logical case. In other words, it's like, I'll use a human example. You have these conquerors in history who wanted their name to be known forever and ever. Genghis Khan, Napoleon. You have all these warriors, Alexander the Great. And they went to war, not just to conquer land, but also to demonstrate their supremacy. Okay, so when they conquered a land that was friendly to them, beautiful. They now recognize the power of this emperor or this king or this leader. But what was the biggest Kiddush? To go to a land that does not like them, that despises them, like Tartainim, that is an enemy, and turn them around that they too are now under this king's control. That's the greatest glory of them all. In other words, not just preaching to the converted. If you can speak to people who initially oppose you and even convince them, or at least conquer them, that would be the biggest Kiddush. That makes sense. Yeah, you could say it's a taiva, there's a desire to have that to be glorified. But there is a logic to it too. So it's more than, so use the analogy, Memaleh, you can say, in Atzilus, fine, it's true, the reason of Begindish Tamudim Bey, that God should be known, and Legal Shlemus Kechesav in the language of Eitz Chaim, that his faculty should be revealed, is achieved, but it's far greater accomplishment when you achieve it in a place that was initially hostile and dark, where it wasn't revealed. And now God's emes, the emes of God is everywhere, also in a world like this. That shows you the true emes of Elikus. Why can't you just say that? So in other words, it's taking the Gala Shlemus Kechesav and Begindish Tamudim to the furthest possible level. The real power of light of Hashem was an example used in other areas. So if you had a light and it's shining, let's say, in a dark forest, okay, great, but it doesn't shine to the farthest corners of the forest. But then you bring a spotlight or you light a torch that's so powerful that the entire forest is lit up. So that demonstrates the power of that light. So why can't you say that it's the same reason as Eitz Chaim and the Zohar, but now Tachteinim forces us to bring the light even to the darkest corners, so it reveals a far deeper shleimus of Atzmus that is not revealed in Atzilus. And yet that's not what he's saying here. He's saying that it's not a Tam Sichli, it's an Nesava. And he doesn't explain this reason. So the Rebbe, in the famous Sikha that was posted, but this is a Sikha, was one of the core foundational talks of the Rebbe that we always, as Bochrim, when we were in Yeshiva, was one of the first things you learned, was in Chelik Vav, volume 6 of the Kutei Sichas, the second Sikha of Shmois. So if you ask any Yeshiva Bocher, Chabad Yeshivas, Shmois Chelik Vav Beis, Chelik Vav Shmois Beis, most likely, unless they haven't learned anything, most likely right away they'll smile, they'll right away know that Sikha. It's considered one of the classics. And that Sikha, the Rebbe, bases on this Samach Vav and Tovshin Beis. As I mentioned, the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Hemshech Rosh Hashanah Tovshin Beis. It's all, by the way, cited in the footnotes, the page numbers of these places, elaborates on this point, and he makes it clear that Nesava is not more shleimus. It's true that in this world we see the great light of God more than anywhere else once we do Avodah, but he says clearly the idea of breaking klippas and making a dira, a home for the divine in this lowest of world, you cannot say from an Atzmus point of view. You could say it on Alexander the Great. You could say it on Napoleon. lahavdil, because they were driven by glory. But to say that on Atzmus, you could say it again, on Memaleh kalalman, on higher levels of Elikus, but not on Atzmus, because Atzmus does not have any need for glory. You can't apply it there. So this whole explanation is very beautiful. It's true. The lowest of worlds brings out even more the power of godliness. However, you cannot say that is the reason God created Tachtenim, because God does not need to reveal even that power. After the fact, again, it reveals that power, but that cannot be the reason that he did it, because he's beyond reason. So what the real chiddush here is, and the Alter Rebbe said of Hatay v'Nishkin Kasha, is saying something much deeper, that we are accessing Atzmus when we make a dir b'tachtenim. We're not just accessing the levels of godliness that are completed when they shine everywhere. That's fulfilled through the other reasons, as he explains there, the reason of the keli, the reason of the oir in the keli. But the Nesava is connected to something that's beyond altogether. And the value of that is that you have Atzmus now engaged. Because if you would say that the dir b'tachtenim is like the initial explanation I just gave, because it demonstrates how powerful the light of God is, that it can reach even the darkest places, then you have to say that Atzmus is not really directly involved, because Atzmus has no benefit in that. There's nothing that Atzmus gains from that. So you'd have to say that all of existence relationship is with godliness that relates to us. So there you could say that, no problem. Just like we say, our chesed, when you give tzedakah, you trigger and generate God's tzedakah, chesed, no problem. Our chesed is reflected in God's chesed is reflected in our chesed. So tzelem elikim, the human being is created in the divine image, and we relate to how godliness manifested after the tzimtzum in an image, in a structure called chachma, bina, das. You learn Torah, you're bonding with God's mind, but you're not necessarily bonding with Atzmus. So Atzmus becomes something that is beyond. And frankly, before Chassidus Chabad, there are Mekubalim that did feel that way. Their opinion was that our relationship with godliness is only with the godliness that God provided to relate to us. It would be like a teacher says, okay, I'll come down to the level of my students. They'll understand as much as they can understand, but they'll never know me, the etzem of who I am. That would remain removed. By bringing the Sava Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Alter Rebbe's big chiddush, this is one of the big chiddushim of the Alter Rebbe in Tanya. Talk about Yutas Kislev, is no. The Sava is coming to tell us that Atzmus says, no, I am engaged, but not for a reason. Don't try to attribute logical reason or shlemus. It's because that's what I desired. Now, it's definitely worthwhile learning the Sikha I'm mentioning in the volume 6, Likud Shmos, where he elaborates a bit more on this. But that's the summation of what he says there. What it means in Avodas Hashem, just to spell it out in like Chassidus applied, if you wish, in a practical way. Well, as long as there's a reason, even the reason that it demonstrates how powerful the godly light is, that it can reach the darkest places, that means that our avodah is still not with total bittul, because we have something. Like he brings there in a footnote, a very interesting footnote, where he says that if there's a reason that we are accomplishing something, and we're bringing, so to speak, some fulfillment, some actualization, realization of God's, let's say, faculties, or that he be known in the lowest of worlds, that would mean that we are Metzias, and in a sense, that Metzias is what I accomplished. I did something for God. Whereas when you say Nesava, then you're saying there's a complete bittul. The only reason you're doing it is not because you're doing something for God. It's because God desired it, period. And it has nothing to do with fulfilling and giving him nachas even. Not that he doesn't have nachas, but that's not the reason. Because there's no reason. It's Nesava. You're simply doing what God desired. And what did he desire? Did it b'tachtenim. So it really requires a far deeper level of bittul. Now, it's important to emphasize that Nesava, once there's a Nesava God wanted, also there should be the other reasons. The reason that he should be aware, evolves once you have the Nesava. But now you have a root for it all. If there would not be Nesava, you'd have a question, why did God need his faculties to be revealed? Once in Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu, once he desired, beyond reason, to have a dir b'tachtenim, tachtenim includes that there's elyonim. there's a Seder Shtalshlus, and there's faculties, and you have to reveal the faculties. So ultimately, they work with each other. It's just that Nesava is the driving force. Then the Rebbe writes this in a footnote in 1978, 77, 78, after the Rebbe had the heart attack. So some of the Chidushim the Rebbe added then was different notes he wrote that after this Nesava, I'm quoting now the language of the Rebbe, that the Nesava, part of the Nesava is that there should be reasons. Because God created a reasonable world, a logical world. In other words, it doesn't remain purely in the world of Nesava and that's it. The Nesava itself, part of it is that there should be Tachtenim, and there should be Seichel, and there should be Midas, and there should be Shkeiches, and there should be Das, begin Tamudin. But now we understand that one leads to the other. Nesava leads to that. And therefore, even mitzad Nesava, you also need the other reasons. Now, there's a lot more to be said on that as well. We're going to learn about it as we go along in Samach Vav. I believe I said some of this in the last class or classes before we took the break. But I just wanted to sum it up because it's critical to the whole picture. Now, this is not light material. I acknowledge that. And it could take a while to absorb it and wrap your head around it. But essentially, it comes down to a joining, an integration between something that's super rational and the rational. It's like Keser coming into Chachma on the lower levels. So here we're talking about Atzmus, Nesava coming into reasons, logical reasons. And they are ultimately all coming from godliness. Because remember, God then chose Eir Ein Sof, and Eir Ein Sof ultimately will have Olaber Etzene. There should be 10 spheres, and there should be a plan and a strategy, an existence with a structure, and Chabad, and Chagas, Seichel, Midas. It's all part of the Nesava. But now we have Nesava engaged in it. And this is the big chiddush, that it's rooted all the way in Atzmus, where it could have not been. Atzmus could have said, I'm creating an existence for you, but don't, I don't want to say don't get me involved, but you don't have a taste of Atzmus there. You only have what Atzmus wanted. You don't have the nature of Atzmus, the personality that's beyond personality of Atzmus involved. And now we do, based on the Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay. It's quite heavy stuff, and okay, I'll stop if anybody wants to ask anything before we continue. But this somewhat is a summation. Just again, we're almost 2 weeks that we haven't learned inside. I thought it'd be worthwhile refresh for myself as well, so we can get back to where we are and continue this journey. But I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Okay. Whenever I don't hear questions after such a heavy piece, I always wonder what it's either because I explained it so well or I didn't. So good. So let's continue. We're on line 4. Line 4, Samach Vav, page 11, Yud Aleph. So now he continues. It says like this. V'hamshacha, this hamshacha which is talking about, Yom Shel B'chinas Atzmus Eid Ein Sof. Dafke in this lowest of worlds, Atzmus Eid Ein Sof, not just Giluyim, meaning revelations like the Shleimus Kechesav of the Eitz Chaim, Das, awareness, consciousness of the Zohar. Hamshacha zu, hamshacha mibchinas pnimis v'atzmus Eid Ein Sof. This is coming from the inner and the core. Translating Atzmus as core. Atzmus is the etzem of Eid Ein Sof. Shalamayla mayla mahagili shemer be'elim is b'chinas Memaleh kalam. So that's where this language comes back into what he used earlier. Much higher, mayla, beyond, completely beyond the revelation that radiates in the world, in existence, in Memaleh kalam. Because remember, Memaleh kalam is Eiris and Kalim. Memaleh kalam is the Eir of Chachma and the Keli of Chachma. The Eir of Chesed and the Keli of Chesed. Just to use the example, like the letters on a page. The idea that you're conveying is the Eir, the energy, and the letters that you're using to convey it is the Keli. That's Memaleh kalam. Yehi Eir, Yehi Rakia. That's where God applies himself after the Tzimtzum. Every oyer enters its particular keli. In Keiches HaAdam, that's the Keiches HaNefesh, the 10 faculties. The power of vision goes into your eye. The power of hearing in your ear. The power of Chabad Seichel in your brain. Emotions in your heart, etc., etc. That's Memaleh. Here, that is fulfilled according to the Eitz Chaim and the Zohar in the higher worlds in a beautiful way. But if you want Pnimius and Atzmus Ein Sof, that's higher than Memaleh. It's not higher than faculties. It's higher than all these attributes. Shezeu rak ha'ora levad. Memaleh is only a reflection. You cannot say that is the etzem of Elokus. Just like by us, etzem haneshama is beyond its faculties. If someone asked you, how do you define yourself? Are you a sum of your parts? Of saying, are you a sum of Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Netzach, Ched, Yesod, Malchus? Or are you some of your mind and your heart and your arms and your legs and your liver and your lungs, etc.? The answer is no. That is the keli, the vehicle, the body for my soul, and my soul has many levels. And you go deeper and deeper, you all get to a point that's even higher than faculties. That's even on a human level. How much more so l'mayla? So it's only ha'ara levad. Shebe'erech ha'elemus. That's commensurate with existence. So once there's an existence, there's the energy that flows into daimim, semeach, chai, medaber, the mineral world, the vegetable, the vegetation, the world of vegetation, animals, humans. Each species has its particular energy that flows into that particular thing. And in this reflection of Memaleh Kol, divine energy that's tailored to existence, there are chilukim madregas, there's diverse levels. Ma'alo mata, higher and lower. There's a hierarchy, higher and lower. To the point that when you go through Seder Shtashlis, from the higher worlds to the point you get to the lowest world, there it's completely concealed. You go a world higher, it's less concealed. Higher, less concealed. So basically you have a whole gradations of many, many levels and dimensions. That's what defines existence. Structure, hierarchy. Everything in our lives are defined by that. There's a structure to existence. So that's not Pnimius Atzmus Ein Sof. That's Giluyim, like as he puts it. Hagili Shemer Be'elemus. And it's part of the structure to create such. It's part of the process to create such a structure, but it's not Aval. But when you're drawing down from Atzmus Ein Sof, with the emphasis Atzmus Ein Sof, not the Giluyim, the Ha'ara, a reflection like the reflection of the sun, is not Atzmus Hashemesh. It's not the core sun. It's sunlight, and the sunlight also goes through gradations, meaning the sun closer to the sunlight closer to the sun is stronger, more intense. The sunlight as it comes down to earth is less intense. But when you're talking about Atzmus Ein Sof, Ein B'zeh is Chalkus Ma'alo Mata. Now you're talking about a level that is beyond, transcends structure. You can't distinguish between what is higher and what is lower, because there is no higher and lower at this point. And that Atzmus, where do you find the gili of something that's higher than structure? That gili is lamata dafka. That's the chiddush here. So it's not that just the light of Memaleh Kol of Atzilus or higher than Atzilus comes down all the way also down below, like we discussed. You're getting a whole new quality, a whole different level of divine revelations that's called etzem. So it's not just part of the process of giluyim, bringing the gili all the way down to the lowest levels. It's coming from a place that is etzem. And where do you get that? Only lamata. You don't get that in the higher worlds. Mepnei shekach nesave mitchila kavyachol. Because that's what God desired from the beginning, so to speak. He's saying kavyachol because obviously we can't talk about beginning. There's no space and no time. So it's all conceptual. That's what this Nesava introduces, this whole different deeper level. And then he adds, and keep in mind that this is happening all through our work, because the Tachtonim on their own are not going to access anything, because the divine is concealed. So he says, and how do we achieve this? You can't achieve this in Atzilus. It's dafka through the Aveda Lamata, the neshama coming down in this darkest world, that accomplishes this. That's what makes it different than all the levels of Ishtalshalus, because levels of Ishtalshalus is a Gilui after Gilui, there's Giluyim, and that's that. Here, it's the Nesava wants dafka Lamata, and it comes only through our Aveda. No matter how much Atzilus would try, or the higher worlds would try, they cannot achieve and fulfill this Nesava. It only can come down below and through, not just that dafka in this world, but also through this world, meaning through our Aveda. Now, he doesn't mention this here, but this is what the Mishnah means when it says, Yofa Shah Achas B'tshuva Maisim Tevim Be'elam Haza. That it's more beautiful, Yofa, more precious, 1 hour of Tshuva Maisim Tevim, where? Be'elam Haza, in this lowest of worlds, than all Kol Chaya Elam Haba. It's a pretty big statement if you think about it. 1 hour of serving God in this world is worth more than the whole Elam Haba. Now, what does Elam Haba comprise of? Gan Eden Atachten, Gan Eden Elyon. You could even say Atzilus, even though Elam Haba may not refer directly to Atzilus, but it's referring to tremendously high levels. And Kol Chaya Elam Haba, the whole Seder Shtashel is basically 1 hour of Aveda. How do you explain that? You explain it because that's connected to Nesava. Kol Chaya Elam Haba is not desire of God. It's a result of God's desire ultimately. But that's not what God desired. He desired this world, Elam Hazeh, and he wanted Shuva Maisim Tevim, our Aveda in this world. And that's what transforms everything. That creates a complete new, innovative, unprecedented power. The power of Pnimis Atzmus Ein Sof. Elam Haba is the Giluyim of Elikus, Memaleh Kalam, even the highest levels of Memaleh Kalam. Okay. I'll stop again. Any questions before I continue? So now the Rebbe Rashab is going to sum it all up and says now like this. V'zehu tachlis briyas v'yisavas ha'elamis. This in a way is like concluding what he began at the bottom of page 4. So he's bringing it all together. And this is the ultimate purpose of the creation and the sustenance or the continuous bringing into existence. Elam is the worlds. Ubishvil zehu yishama. So he keeps saying 2 things. The reason for existence and the reason for the soul coming down. Because remember, it's the soul that does the Aveda. So God could have created Tachtenim. He doesn't send Adam and Chava and doesn't send human beings into this world and Neshama beguf. How is it going to get done? So the second part of this kavanah is the Yerida of the Neshama comes down. Sheneshamish Yisrael. And with the purpose that the souls of Israel, Al Yedei Avedasam, through their labor, through their effort, through their service, Yamshichu b'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof Lamata. They should achieve this goal of bringing down Atzmus Ein Sof Lamata. V'amshacha v'agili yi al dei b'chinas Memaleh Kalam. And here's where we see it comes together. How should they do it? They do it through the channels of Memaleh Kalam. That's not a question. They're not bypassing, say, the Ishtalshalos. Even when we say Tachtenim are the ultimate kavanah, so you can say Seif Ma'aseh b'machshava tchila, what do you need the whole in between? Why don't you just say God creates the lowest of worlds with all the darkest, the tzimtzumim that conceal and create such darkness, and forget about Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, or higher than Atzilus, because that's not the kavanah. The kavanah should be a dira b'tachtenim, and a dira means in a revealed way. So he says the amshacha therefore agili yi al b'dei b'chinas Memaleh Kalam. That's why he said the amshacha of sevav kalalman in Memaleh Kalam. We're not just bypassing and just reaching the etzem. You want the etzem begili. So you could have just helam, you could have just gilui. We want the etzem begili. So giluyim is the Memaleh Kalam b'dei sheyeh gili lamata. In order there should be gili lamata, because without that you could say, okay, God created a world, And that's it. He has tachtenim, but he doesn't have a dira. Now you need neshamas to come and learn Torah and do mitzvahs and work hard in revealing, refining, and transforming this world into a home for God. To build a mishkan, you need gold, silver, gold, copper, all the materials, and you have to shape them and to build a mishkan. So it's going through Memaleh kalama sheyeh gilui lamata ubigdei sheyeh b'bchinas er pnimi, and it should be internalized. That it's taking the etzem and making it part of our lives, integrating it into our structure. Because remember, tachtenim, the nesava wants structure. But he doesn't want structure just for the sake of structure. He wants the etzem that's beyond structure to be revealed within the structure. And for that, we have Memaleh kalam, pnimi. So it's like in Avodas Hashem, this would mean not just Kabbalah Seil and Bittul and Mesiras Nefesh, but that the Kabbalah Seil, the Bittul and Mesiras Nefesh should permeate and should infuse and penetrate also the Keiches Gluyim of Seichel and Midas. So it's not just reaching the Etzem, it's bringing the Etzem into our faculties and in our attributes, into our attributes. That's called Pnimi. He's telling us to look at the Maimer in the first Maimer in Tafresh Nun Tes. So this is a Hemshech, famous Hemshech of the Rebbe Rashab. Earlier, obviously, this is 7 years earlier than Samach Vav, Tafresh Nun Tes. That would be the Samach Vav began 1905. This would be 1899 or 1898, to be more exact. And the footnotes, they tell you what page and so on. And how do you make this hamshacha? Then you have Torah and Mitzvos. Shaydekiyim Torah and Mitzvos the Neshamas Yisrael. That when Neshamas Yisrael fulfill Torah and Mitzvos, mamshichim b'chinas Atzmus erein sof be'elam. They draw down the core of the divine energy, infinite divine energy in this world into the elam. And this is what we say. Rashi quotes it right in the beginning of Bereshis. Bereshis b'shvil Yisrael says the word Bereshis bara lakim. So he says Bereshis is made up of two words, Beis, Reshis. That two things preceded everything. Two things are the primary Reshis, are like the Resh. B'shvil Yisrael, the world was created for Yisrael. Ub'shvil shenikraim Reshis, that there's like Reshis B'kurei, as Rashi brings. Ub'shvil HaTeirah shenikras Reshis. So that's the Beis Reshis, Neshamas Yisrael and Teirah. So Neshamas have the power to do it. They activate it. They're the ones that implement it. And the tools they use is Torah Mitzvahs, divine tools that are also Reshis. Shaydei Neshamas Yisrael, the Torah, through Neshamas Yisrael and Torah, Nimshach Teisvis Eiris Be'elamis. Through that, is drawn down abundant Teisvis. Not just the Eir of Memaleh Kalalmin that created existence, but much more additional light. And to the point, the Hainu B'chinas Gili, the Hainu Gili B'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof, which means the Gili not just of the Ha'ara, the reflection of the divine that creates existence, but they're drawing down through Torah, the Neshamas Yisrael, all the way to from Atzmus Ein Sof, from the highest levels, like we just discussed. And that concludes this paragraph, page 11. Okay, so you have here a really very succinct and poignant description of the purpose of existence, all the components. Obviously, this needs to be unpacked and developed, which is exactly what Samach Vav is going to do in the next pages and the entire Hemshech, frankly. But let me stop here and take any questions that you may have, or comments or thoughts. Everyone's so quiet today. Okay, it's fine.
You're doing such a good job explaining that it's pretty clear, and there's nothing.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm not complaining at all. I myself have several questions, frankly, but we'll
What
leave
are your
that.
What are your questions?
Let's wait. Yeah, I unfortunately, I know what's coming afterwards, so I know they'll be answered. But if I learn this without, it's it's all right. I'm very glad to hear that. It's very good to be able to say. Now, remember, these are points that I'm sure we've learned earlier, or you've learned on your own. These are you'll find this so often in Sichos and Maimarim, so it's not like it's all new material. But what's beautiful in Samach Vav is, first of all, the language of the Rebbe Rashab I find to be extremely poetic in a way, very smooth, very clear. He's very, very like you could see. He chooses the words perfectly. Not suggesting other Maimarim don't do that, but this stands out. To me, it's always stood out as being very, in a way, easy reading, even though it's deep topics, but it's fluid. Okay, good. Even hearing what you just said is good to hear. That it's clear. Good.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment about just how clear he writes it out. I mean, that's not to say that it's just the words themselves make the concepts understandable. It needs Ian, but it is a very clear explication of the idea.
Right. Good. Are there anybody else anybody has anything you want to say or comment?
A little comment for me. A
Sure.
couple of hours ago, two little grandchildren twins were born.
Oh, Mazel
Mazel
Tov.
tov. Mazel tov.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Mazel tov.
Mazel
Boys,
tov, mazel tov.
boys, girls.
Two boys.
Okay,
Beautiful.
should only have chassidus nachas, and should be
Amen.
healthy, and
Amen.
grow up to be real soldiers, and bringing Torah and chassidus to the world. Okay.
Rebbe's soldiers are always welcomed.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed you in Israel, but I literally was there for 24 hours. I in and out, but I was
know.
there.
You know, I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see you. Teskislev is growing. More and more people appreciating. Hopefully, more and more will learn Chassidus. I do feel a certain shift, and I still don't know if it's a critical mass, but there's definitely more people beginning to appreciate. And that's good. When I was in Yerushalayim on Monday night, there were a few people who came over to me who began listening to the Ayin Beis classes because they just discovered it now. So it was very gratifying to hear. So all the years that we've learned the Ayin Beis is all recorded. So thank God people can access it, and of course now Samach Vav. So yeah,
Beautiful.
yes.
You will bring it to the critical mass.
Halavai. Well, let's say we'll do it.
The Hayam Yam from yesterday, I think, talking about how if you, think about Mishnayos and you're walking in the street and Torah learning, we're all sitting here and we're all helping to bring things to their ultimate conclusions. So what better thing could we be doing?
Yep, absolutely. Well, the Tachtenim part of the world is very obvious, right? Everybody sees that. And now we're trying to finish the Dira B'Tachtenim. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev once turned to Hashem and said, a kunz, in Yiddish, a kunz means a trick, a gimmick. You did a trick. You gave them, meaning us, human beings, you gave them the material world to experience. and you wrote about the spiritual worlds in books. Why don't you try the other way around? Let them experience the spiritual and write about the material world and all its hostility in books. And you'll see how they behave then.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way of putting it. I mean, obviously, Nesava, the desire is this world, but it's interesting to put it that way. You gave them a jungle to live in, and you write about the garden in the books. Let them live in a garden and write about a jungle in the books. I don't know. I just always found that very
Yeah,
insightful and amusing, even. But
beautiful.
yeah.
I was at his I was there at where his resting
Right.
place, and it's
Yes,
amazing.
your family that originates, right?
Yeah, from Podolia province, but amazing. I mean, when you're there, you just feel this sense of you just feel the energy. I don't even know how else to put it. And Mezhebush and all these places,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
just
yeah.
very, very powerful.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording here. Let's stop here. Let's see here what we got. I want to just, before I do, I want to thank Yitzchak and all of you who have helped with the Hanukkah campaign. So I'm actually going to be recording them today because I just got back. I didn't even have a chance. But thank God we have, I think, dedications for most of them. And so it'll be beautiful. I want to share just one thing. I'll give you a little appetizer. You may have heard this on the Yerushalayim. When I was in Yerushalayim, there was one of the last hostages that was released. His name is Elkana Babat. He's a Colombian Israeli citizenship. He was a producer at the Nova Music Festival. He was in captivity for 738 years. 8 days. He spoke. I was sitting near him, and he was very inspired. After I spoke, he told me he's going to share. Till then he was a little more reserved. So I don't know if you heard what he said, but I'm going to share it on one of the Hanukkah, maybe the first Hanukkah message, that he was in captivity. He was in the tunnels, which are pitch black. Talk about tachtonim, pitch black, and you can imagine what kind of torture. He didn't like to talk about what he went through, but it was really there. And he said the words. He said they took everything. They take you. They control your life, what you eat. They took away my wife, me from my wife and my child, and so on. The only thing they couldn't take, he says, is our emunah, our faith and our betacha. But then it came Hanukkah last year, and he wanted to light Hanukkah. No way he's lighting Hanukkah candles in these tunnels as a hospital. But they gave them a flashlight to use when they had to go out for whatever, the bathroom. So you know what he did? He took the flashlight, and the first night of Hanukkah, he shined the flashlight on one finger. The second night on 2 fingers. And the third night on 3 fingers. And that way he went through all the 8 days of Hanukkah. Each night he used his fingers, 8 fingers ultimately. And he said this, when he said it, the place, I remember we were in the Great Synagogue. We were like, wow. I mean, this was mind-blowing. What a Jew does. So you talk about something inspiring. I just wanted to share that, even though, again, I'm going to say it on one of the, I have to share this. It's just so powerful to me.
So moving.
We have all the, thank God, the freedom to light menorah and Hanukkah as we see fit. But here, he used the flashlight. I think he even said Hashem must have, I don't know, of course Hashem appreciated that effort. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. But I want to thank again Yitzchak for helping, for your own support and helping getting the support to able to sponsor all the programs we're doing now. We're going to do 9. 8 days of Hanukkah, and then one bonus, one special extra one. Messages, hopefully powerful messages, including this story and others. But I just wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody in the class who donated, because we're almost at our target of $3,600, which is the retail price of a Hanukkah candle. So there's still time for anybody who wanted to donate. It's not too late, and we're still not quite at that level. Very close, thank God. Thanks to many of you who donated, but still not too late. So please, you can go to Rabbi Jacob. There are links all over the WhatsApp, but also go to meaningfullifecenter.com. Click on donate. Just put in the amount you want, and then in the notes in the memo section of that page, just write in Samach or just SV or whatever. So we know how to we know that the donation's coming from our group, so it can go toward our candle. But anyways, thank you all very much, and thanks, of course, to Rabbi Jacobson for giving so much Chassidus, the content he puts out in this class and so many others to us and the whole world. And this is what it means, to spread the well springs of Chassidus outward. And you all are participating in it by not just learning, but also by donating so that Rabbi Jacobson can do all the things he does, have his staff and generate the digital content. And they continue to use the state-of-the-art technology with AI and everything to spread the words of Chassidus, and that takes money. So thank you all very much. Shkoyach. And if it's not too late to make the donation, I'll post the link probably once or twice more before Hanukkah. Thanks very much.
Okay, good.
How is it going to be disseminated? I mean, are you going to?
It's going to be
put
on
it
all
on-
our channels. We'll put it out every day. WhatsApp will go out. We'll do it on
Okay.
email. I think an
Okay, great.
email to our list. All our platforms. I'm not sure. I have to ask the team, but
Okay.
we'll blast it out there.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And hopefully you guys will help. You can forward it to anyone you want, Okay, so I'm ending the recording. I didn't do that yet. I wanted to make this announcement. Let's see here. What have we got here?